Look, there's a reason that some creators make $60,000 a month in brand deals and other creators make zero. And let me tell you right now, it's not their follower count. I literally just spent a week at a content mastermind with a bunch of creators. In fact, some of Europe's top travel content creators. And I discovered that some creators with over 1 million followers make almost no money in brand deals, whilst other creators with less than 200,000 followers make upwards of 30K per month. And after speaking to these people in depth, there's like 4 key strategies that they're using, the people who are making a lot of money are using, to basically optimize their profile for brand deals. And not all creators want to optimize their profile for brand deals, because when you optimize for brand deals, ultimately you're just an influencer. But making $60,000 a month in brand deals sounds pretty good. So if that's something that you're interested in, then keep listening. And honestly, these strategies that I'm going to mention are super obvious, but honestly, they go unnoticed by the majority of creators. So listen up. I'm going to break down these strategies so that you can simply just replicate this formula and copy it and do this for yourself if you want to become specifically a travel content creator who gets lots of brand deals, right? So the first thing that I want to talk about is basically building an audience from a specific geographical location. So if you are a creator that wants to optimize your profile for brand deals, you basically want to build an audience from wherever you are. If you're a creator based in the UK, you probably want to have a UK audience. If you're a creator based in Norway, you will probably want to have a majority Norwegian audience. And the way to do that is basically start educating people about your local area, because the people who are going to watch your content are typically going to be from your local area. So if I start speaking about, I'm from Scotland. If I started making content about Scotland, the majority of my audience will be from Scotland by default, because they're the people who are most interested in whatever it is I'm talking about. So one of my friends that was on the trip, Tom, he started by speaking about a specific geographical location in the UK. He started speaking about specifically Devon and Cornwall, which are small towns in the south of England. And this made him build a really strong, engaged community from these specific locations. And that's basically how he started his audience, and he built a primarily UK based audience, and then he started branching out to other areas of the UK, and it really worked well for him. He's doing fantastic in brand deals. Then the other thing that I want to mention about how to build an audience is to build an audience by speaking in your native language. This is obviously harder if you speak English, because lots of countries in the world speak English, but there was other creators on the trip that were from Norway and they spoke Norwegian in their content. And this ultimately resulted in far more brand deals. In fact, they were speaking English in their content for 4 years and they got almost no brand deals. Then they decided, right, let's just make a TikTok account where we speak Norwegian. And after 4 weeks, they landed a brand deal that was €9,000, $9,000, whatever it was. And that is simply just because they started building an audience from their local country. And it is normally like the local version of whatever brand you're working with that are going to distribute the brand deals anyway. For example, I work with GoPro, but I'm technically based in Germany. So I work with GoPro Germany. When I'm based in Australia, I was working with GoPro Australia. If I'm based in the UK, I'm working with GoPro UK. Is normally, especially with the big brands, there's normally like regional divisions of these brands that are going to distribute the brand deals anyway. And if you have an audience that's from everywhere in the world, then you're just less attractive to brands. So the first thing that you want to do is aim to build an audience from one geographical location. And if you can't do that, at least get geographical locations that are valuable to brands like the US, Canada, and Western Europe, because ultimately these countries have the most money and the most buying power. That's who brands want to reach. So the next thing you want to do if you want to optimize your profile for brand deals is basically tell your story. And what I mean by tell your story is basically think of transformations in your life. Where have I came from and where did I get to? Because brands realize that this is what people buy from. People buy from you when they can relate to you. And this is the exact reason that there's out of shape personal trainers, because most people can relate more to the person, the personal trainer who was like a fat guy and now he's in decent shape, than the guy who was in incredible shape his entire life. People can't relate to that. So they don't buy from them. That is why out of shape personal trainers are literally a thing. And there's lots of creators on this trip that would talk about, different stories of their life. The Norwegian couple that I was on the trip with, they would talk about how they built this life together, how they built this life as a couple from meeting each other in high school to then traveling the world, going on crazy adventures and living in their van and starting a production company and how they made money throughout that. Then there's other creators that would talk about their mental health and what they've done to improve their mental health over a period of time. Even me, I talk about my story, which is like going from corporate life to now going to this life where like I'm basically living my dreams. And like if I won the lottery, I would live my life no differently. So whatever that transformational story that you can tell is, that is what's going to make people relate to you, and that's what's going to make people buy from you. And ultimately, you know, when if you want to work with lots of brands, you essentially just need to be more relatable. Whether it's, you know, build an audience from one specific location, people can relate to you because they're from that location also, or they can relate to elements of your story because they can see themselves in that story, they can see themselves in that journey that you've been through, and you can help them to the other side. So tell your story. And then the next element of telling your story is, like, I like to say, it's getting your personality in your content, right? But this is ultimately just telling different stories. When I say get your personality in the content, I don't just mean like you should speak in your content. Of course you should speak in your content, but what I mean is make people realize that you're a complete person, make yourself more relatable, and kind of broaden your scope of brands that you can reach. So just talk about the typical things, you know, health, whether that's your mental health, your physical health, what you're doing to keep fit, wealth, which is, you know, your financial situation, you know, do you have another job? How are you supporting yourself? How are you, living this life? These are all relatable topics. And then relationships. How is your relationship with your family, your friends, your loved ones, your partner, whatever? These are all topics that people can relate to, and it definitely broadens the scope of brands that you can work with. One of the creators on the trip was called Tom. He would basically create voiceover videos. His niche was travel, but he wouldn't necessarily talk about travel. He would basically create a deeper meaning to the video. So he would create a video about going on a trip to Madeira. The visuals are all about going on a trip to Madeira, but the voiceover of the video is more about a deeper meaning. So it was about, okay, I'm going on a solo trip to Madeira, and this makes me feel like I need to be in a relationship because I'm at this stage of my life, and da 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 da. So if you can find deeper meaning to any video, make a voiceover about it and relate it back to what the concept of the video is about. So if your original niche is travel or van life or whatever it is, you can still talk about different elements of your life and your personality and relate it back to the visuals, relate it back to the journey that you're going on, the location that you're visiting. How did that make you feel? How can you relate that back to health, wealth, and relationships? And when you get these other elements of your personality and your content, as I said, you just become far more appealing, relatable to everybody, and, you know, far easier for lots of brands to align with you. And then ultimately you're going to get more partnerships. So get your personality in your content and integrate health, wealth, and relationships. That is point number 3. And point number 4 is, once you have built a bit of momentum, you've done all this stuff, you've told your story, you've got your personality in your content, your profile is ultimately as relatable as it possibly could be, as authentic as it possibly could be, because you're introducing people into your life and you're telling people your story, and people can relate to you, and brands will want to partner with you just because of that, right? So your profile is optimized for getting brand deals. But how do you actually get the brand deals? Literally, it is this simple. You just put an email in your bio. You're going to get inbound messages from lots of brands. I promise you, if you do all the stuff that I've just told you and you make your profile super relatable, you get your voice in it, you get your personality in it, you tell your story, and you talk about different aspects of your life, and you relate it back to whatever your niche is, your profile is going to be perfectly optimized. So you put an email in your bio, brands are going to reach out. They're probably going to say, like, this is what we want, this is our budget. You're going to discuss the ballpark number. And bear in mind, when you're talking about numbers, the higher the benchmark is, so whoever says the number first, that's basically the benchmark for the negotiation. So shoot high, shoot 20K, right? That's the benchmark. If they come down to 10K and you're happy to do it for 5, you're still winning, right? So the benchmark is something that should be set by you. Often people say that, like, whoever says the number first loses, because if I say 1,000 and you would have done it for 3, then I've lost out on 2K. But just shoot high, shoot for the stars and see what happens, right? There's always room for negotiation, and these brands have a lot more money than you think. The way I typically think about brand deals is that if a brand wants to reach 100,000 people, for example, the average CPM, which is cost per 1,000 people reach, if they're going to run ads, is like $9. Now, So if they want to reach 100,000 people, that is $900. If you can reach 1 million people, that's 9K. That's your value, you know? And reaching 1 million people with a brand deal is not that hard. If they want to put ad spend behind it, again, they're going to reach far more people and you can basically charge far more money. But I'm digressing a little bit. So once brands reach out to you via email, you are going to discuss a ballpark number and then you're going to get them on a call. Most creators will not get these brands on a call. And when you get the brand on a call, that's where they feel seen, that's where they feel heard, and that's where they feel valued, right? And when you get them on a call, you're basically just going to make them feel comfortable that you are the right person for this role. It's essentially like applying for a freelance job. You're the right person for this role and you can do the job that they want, and you can just talk to them about the vision for the project, right? Once you get off the call, what a lot of creators that were making a lot of money from specific brand deals were doing was they would create a pitch, and you can create a pitch basically on Canva, and the pitch only needs to include 4 things, right? It needs to include a bit about you, why you're good for this job, your vision for the project. So what is your creative vision? What can you bring that's different to other creators? And why specifically do you align with this brand, or why does your audience align with this brand? The next thing you want to include is like a mood board. What is the vision of, what is the outcome of the project? How does it look? Create a mood board. What kind of stuff are you going to shoot? The more you can basically reassure the brand of the outcome that they want, the more likely you are to get the job. And then the final thing you want to include is packages. And these packages are basically how you stack your offer. And you're probably going to have 2 or 3 packages, and you want to price the most expensive package as the most valuable package. And you can use ChatGPT to simply just help you psychologically price your packages. But that's ultimately what you want to do. And the way you can stack your offer is by saying stuff like, okay, I can post this same video on multiple platforms and this is going to give you even more reach. Or I can give you exclusivity where I will not work with any of your competitor brands, but this allows me to price my service more expensive. Or you could talk about usage rights. Does the brand have the right to run your content that you've created as an ad and put ad spend behind this, but which actually negatively affects your brand? Because if people from your audience see your face in ads, they're going to be like, he's just trying to sell me stuff all the time. So that negatively affects your brand, but it means you can charge a lot more money for it. And then how long do they get to do that for? Do they get to run the ad for 3 months, 6 months, a year? And depending on how long they get to use the rights to your content, the more you can charge. And then the final thing that some creators were doing, which I found really, really interesting, was they would basically offer to write the brand a newsletter. So they would basically say, this is how I used your product. This is how we found the product. This is our review on the product. And this is how it really aligns with us. And this is why we really like that. And they can create some content specifically for that newsletter. They can write it out for them. And this is just additional added value for the brand. That is really not that much added work for you. So I understand that I'm probably spitballing a lot of information at you right now, speaking quite fast, and it can probably be quite overwhelming. But this is why I created a 6-module course inside my Creator Club that basically breaks this all down for you and makes the whole process of building a personal brand really, really easy. And it's actually how one of my clients, Alvaro, got 75,000 views on his first reel after joining the club. So if building a personal brand is something that interests you, the link is in the description. But nevertheless, I digress. So if I were to summarize the path for any creator starting out right now and wanting to optimize their profile, wanting to ultimately to be like a travel influencer, I would say that the path is, and this is a phrase that we kind of coined on the trip, is niche in, niche out. So start narrow, start educating people about a narrow topic. Whether say you want to be a travel content creator and you're living in a small town in Germany, educate people about that small town in Germany, because what's not traveling to you is traveling to everybody else in the world. And the people who are going to be most interested in that content are probably the people who are in your local area. So start narrow, start educating people about a specific topic, whether that's a travel location or whatever it is, right? Start narrow, and then as you start to build momentum, you start introducing new elements of your personality. You start talking about your story, you start talking about different elements of your personality like health, wealth, and relationships. And then you're going to become far more relatable. You're going to increase the scope of brands that will probably want to work with you. And then when you're ready to work with a brand, they're simply just going to email you and you're going to pitch them on a call. And that's pretty much it. Honestly, it's really not that hard, but it's something that almost anyone can do. So get on it and enjoy your life as a travel content creator. I'm going to go outside and enjoy this beautiful day. And I will see you later.